Well, the divisive political debate in Israel surrounding the new government's policies that we've just been talking about has also spilled over into concerns about its relationship with the Jewish diaspora abroad, especially the American Jewish community. Well, earlier I spoke with Malcolm Hoenlein, the vice chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, which is the umbrella group of American Jewish leaders, about those concerns, along with prospects of American-Israeli cooperation towards the Iran threat and the challenge anti-Semitism is now presenting to U.S. Jews. Here is that conversation. Malcolm Hoenlein, Vice Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
And Malcolm, no surprise to see you here with a new Israeli government coming into office, meeting the leaders here. But let's talk about the relationship between now the American Jewish community and this new government. Some voices of concern have been raised. Of course, the conference spans the ideological spectrum, so there are many supporters, certainly, perhaps of some of the new government's policies. But in some circles, concerns, issues like, for example, changing the law of return. How do you see this relationship going forward?
Well, first of all, I think the U.S.-Israel relationship is very solid. I think the appointment of Ron Dermer to specialize in the U.S.-Israel relationship, in addition to the other agencies and the Prime Minister himself focused on it, are very important. And I've heard positive reaction in Washington to this. Look, whenever, often in the past, I should say, new governments, when Sharon got elected, when Begin got elected, there were extreme reactions, people's concerns, fears about radical moves that will take place. And we see that it gets tempered by reality, and I think that will be the case here as well. Netanyahu very much values the diaspora-Israel relationship and the U.S.-Israel relationship. He's not going to do anything to endanger it. I regret some of the statements that have been made. I think it's unhelpful that these public declarations, which then people express great concern about, even though they don't know necessarily what the substance, how these things will play out. So I'm hopeful. I think that we will see that some of the extreme measures that have been suggested or talked about will not take place, and that we will get much greater clarity about their significance, and I think people will be less concerned at that point.
But we do see the political divide in Israel growing wider, the rhetoric becoming much more divisive, similar to something of what we've seen in the U.S. And how does that play out? Can the conference, which concludes the political spectrum, find consensus on issues of importance, for example, to the American Jewish community?
Absolutely. I think people want to reach consensus. They want to come together on the issues of concern, even when there are issues over which there will be differences. The conference doesn't take a position on religious issues because you can't take votes on consensus when it comes to matters of conscience. And I think that
and when you include Reform and Orthodox
and Conservative and the others,
right.
But the truth is that they still sit around the table. We discuss the issues. We try to create an atmosphere of respect. And what you pointed to is quite right. It's not just a phenomenon in Israel and the United States. It's global. We see it in Europe, how the extreme partisanship of the politics, the loss of the political center, the excessive rhetoric that accompanies politics today. And we have to rise above it. And I think it's something we can't afford, not Israel, not the American Jewish community. And certainly we need to stand together because we realize that we have one faith and one faith, and that what happens to Israel will impact us, and what happens to American Jewry facing anti-Semitism, facing very serious challenges, impacts Israel as well.
Right. Well, let's talk about an issue where maybe there is a chance for some kind of consensus between Israel and the Biden administration that there wasn't in the past, and that maybe is Iran, because we see the fact that the Iran nuclear agreement, which had been such a divisive issue between Israel and Washington, has now, it seems, been put to the side, if not dead. So how do you see going forward if the Washington and Jerusalem could come together now on Iran, on its nuclear threat, and some of the other challenges it's presenting in the region?
Yes, absolutely. It's a core issue. And I do think it's one where there is general consensus between the United States and Israel, and especially, as you point out, the JCPOA is on life support at best, if it's not dead completely. And we are in touch with people in Iran on a regular basis. The demonstrations are going to continue. They're growing. They're well thought out. This is not haphazard. There's not a central leader, but there is a leadership operation there. So I think that it could be sustained for a long time. Nobody predicted it would go for 4 months. There are now 20,000 people in prison. There have been hundreds that have been killed. And we see now the public executions, all of which rises in public opinion against Iran and creates a consolidation of opinion. So on the human rights issues, on the drone sales in Ukraine and other issues, I think there is a growing consensus between Republicans, Democrats, left, right in America, and certainly between Israel and America, that we have to be prepared as Iran increases its stockpile of enriched uranium, imposes more IR-6s into the system, more advanced system, and is weaponizing its missiles, testing ballistic missiles. The challenge is only growing, and the longer we wait, the more difficult it will become. So I think the United States and Israel, and I think some European countries now, Germany is imposing sanctions, France is imposing sanctions, because they recognize the threat that Iran poses.
Right. Let's talk about another issue that I would say almost unfortunately there is a kind of consensus within the American Jewish community as a threat, and that is, of course, anti-Semitism. It's a domestic challenge for the American Jewish community, spanning, of course, again, all the organizations in the conference. How concerned are you, looking over the span of years, about how this has come to the forefront in recent years, even in recent months?
And every day it grows worse. Jew hatred is a phenomenon that should be of concern to everyone, Jew and non-Jew alike. I think that the consensus in the conference is very clear. We're working together on a variety of efforts, both addressing the internet hatred, addressing all manifestations, especially on our campuses where students feel very vulnerable. But not just students. We're hearing more and more from faculty. We're hearing about the incidents in the streets, the increase of 40-some% again in New York this year of anti-Semitic attacks. And it's not just targeting one community. Visible Jews may be the first targets, they're never the last. And we know that Jews may be the first, but we know that when hatred is allowed to go unchecked, everybody becomes a victim. This is a time when we have to build coalitions, we have to stand together, we have to hold to account those who commit the acts, but also when we have this revolving door justice, that those who impose the sentences have to be held to account. Our legislators and others, if they have this ridiculous system where people get out.
Also,
right,
maybe holding to account what you might call the influences, because I saw you criticize the model Bella Hadid, for example, just this week over her role, and of course the Louis Vuitton company, which has recently hired her as spokesperson.
Exactly, and it's time when we have to hold to account. I think what happened with Ye and with others, with Kylie, was very important, because it's a statement that it's not acceptable. Every time we allow people who are influencers, who have high visibility, who influence young people, and we see that for too long we've tolerated the Farrakhan messages, which have permeated the black community, and it's echoed by some of the people that we're talking about, even when they don't know the significance of what they're saying. So we have to be careful when we use the term anti-Semite or Jew hater, but on the other hand, we have to be able to hold people to account, expose them to the daylight, that the world sees who they are, that the actions that will be taken, whether it's in passing IRA regulations, whether it's the imposition of actions by universities against those who deny Jewish students their rights, or the rights of pro-Israel groups to be heard. We have an array of challenges today that are very significant, and it will take a unified community. It's the only way we can do it. No one organization can do it. That's why the role of the conference in this case, whether before in building bridges or in this case, standing together, utilizing the resources to maximum effect, and hold our elected officials and all influentials, whether in education, entertainment, media, every sector, they have to be held to account. I don't want any more memorials to dead Jews. Everybody is very good at having memorials. I want them to stand up for a living Jewish community, a vibrant Jewish state. I want them to be able to stand up and speak out against hatred, not because we say so, but because they believe it's important to do so.
Malcolm Hoenlein, Vice Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.
Thank you.